history movie and film binge marathon over the weekend, and I gotta say, this is probably one of my favourite parts of it that I did watch. I'm going to be doing a review of the 1988 TV movie called Jack the Ripper with Michael Caine. So this came out in '88 and it was on the channel ITV. It was to coincide with the 100th anniversary of the Jack the Ripper murders in London, of course, and it had an absolutely amazing cast. Mainly Michael Caine is the man. I think at this point in his career he was in a little bit of a sort of in between his earlier days of being a leading man in things like Zulu and before his sort of later renaissance of his career in the 2000s. So this was smack bang in the middle, and him, Jane Seymour, Armand Asante, who we spoke about earlier on in 1492, Conquest of Paradise. This was a really, really good TV movie, and I just seen on IMDb it's got a fantastic rating, which is 7.6 out of 10. So this was split into two episodes, two 90-minute episodes back in 1988. I will say I thought that the series was really good at exploring the different types of theories. There's a million and one different theories around Jack the Ripper. There's other movies as well if you wanted to check those out, which is another one which is From Hell with Johnny Depp, which is one of the more famous ones. That's based on a graphic novel. I'm trying to say maybe Mark Millar, but that's based on a graphic novel, and there's a lot of symbology around Freemasonry and the impact, and it does allude to within this film. And I'm glad that there's a quote in the film that Michael Caine says to his detective partner, who was really, really well played. I've not seen this actor in anything since, but his partner George in it, he says, if the women are not important, then obviously the killer must be, because the amount of haste that the state apparatus in Victorian Britain went into overdrive to get these random, let's face it, these random murders, these really gruesome murders of what people would have considered back then to have been the dregs of society. Why were they so special? And what was special about these murders? And the fact that the brutality was something. Of course, you have things alluded to in the series which I really like about whether was it a butcher, was it a doctor, was it an anarchistic group that were trying to use murders as a way of generating displeasure with the state apparatus. There's a character I thought is really interesting watching this now, particularly with our sort of social, our sort of cultural wars going on at the moment, particularly in the last 2 years, is that you've got a character there which is called George Lusk, and his sort of Marxist Workers of the World Unite type of rhetoric that he's playing up, and the fear which he's selling to the ordinary people of Whitechapel is really reminiscent to the sort of, I'm not saying that this is wholly the same, but it's very reminiscent to the sort of anti-police rhetoric you see in, particularly in Britain and America at the moment. There's even a scene where there's a vigilance committee, a sort of vigilante committee, and that there's no more police, and they chant no more police, and it's alluded to the collaboration between a newspaper man named Bates and this Lusk character about whether the collaboration in order to sort of generate more headlines, that sort of avenue was explored, and I thought it was very, very interesting. Of course, it is a whodunit. It is told as a whodunit. There are a couple of key characters in the film, such as there's a fortune teller of the Queen's, which was he's a very interesting character in the movie. A lot of sort of symbolic and a lot of duality in the explanation about what he was seeing in his visions at the time in this series anyway. Um, and I think in the official investigation they did kind of discount him as a bit of a quack. Uh, and then there was an actor who was in the series who was playing Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and they tried to allude that was he somebody who was maybe a bit of a sort of early method actor, somebody who wanted to take the boundaries of his profession right to the very edge and was sort of partaking in something which was maybe over the line. So he was a suspect, but ultimately, I thought the build up to the conclusion of it was fantastic, and I will be spoiling you because I normally do non-spoiler videos. I will be spoiling it. So similarly to the end of From Hell, they do settle on the Queen's Doctor, which is William Gull being the killer. Now, I don't know whether he was the killer or not, but I think that is where the smart money would lie. The killings stopped abruptly after the killing of Mary Kelly, and it would, and you have all these different types of things like it is alluded to in the TV series about 1,001 random people, sending in notes and so-called handwritten letters of the killer to different newspaper um, establishments, and it was a bit of a frenzy at the time in in um, in London of what was going on. But I still come back to the phrase that if the women were not important, then whoever was doing the killing must have had some sort of stature. That doesn't necessarily mean that it was Gull, and it is alluded to in there that was it the Queen's grandson. I don't think there's really been any hard evidence to suggest that it was Prince Albert Victor. Um, but was it something? Was it somebody who was maybe a professional person that the state sort of apparatus could not have somebody in a certain profession be shown to be brutal or not put together, or that the sort of, even if you consider the sort of the rigidity of Victorian class system, if you were to disrupt that with the sort of display that somebody who walks around in tails and a top hat is just as absolutely messed up as somebody who is a prostitute or somebody who's a pimp, like they show in the series, would that mean that then that sort of fabric of that class system would be an illusion, and that possibly could be something as simple as that, really? Um, we just I think that like there's always someone who knows, and it's written down somewhere. Somebody knows what the answer is. But anyways, going back to the TV series, I thought that the Michael Caine was absolutely fantastic in this, and Jane Seymour as well. She plays sort of like a love interest to Michael Caine, who plays Inspector Abilene, and he was the main detective. And already within the first couple of scenes of the film, he's shown as a bit of a drunk, but he was already under pressure to get it wrapped up, make an arrest, get somebody in. Because I think that one of the things that really pushed him was the brutality. But you're talking about five murders ultimately, and I think this is one of those early sort of proto serial killer tales that people are still fascinated by, because we don't have a definitive we don't have closure. That it is similarly to something like the JFK assassination, where you do give a lot of, oh, was it this, was it that, was it this, was it that, and that sells books. Quite frankly, it sells a lot of articles. I mean, you've got a lot of sort of reputable people, reputable authors who probably delve into the topic, who will come up with some sort of random third-rate sort of suspect that nobody had even considered. And of course, there's obviously somebody invested in that, which is a book deal as well. But talking about books, there's a couple I would recommend. The one of them I do have, which is the complete history of Jack the Ripper. So this then goes into everything, all the suspects, key details of the case, the letters, the Dear Boss letter, the key events, the actual chronology and narrative about what happened as well. And I think it's really good. If you read, this is a good starting off book. I've read a little bit around it since then, but another book I would actually, because this is what tends to happen with, people are fascinated by crime, particularly about this. But I think the ball gets lost in the seduction of the who did it and the who done it, is that people lose sight of the actual victims themselves. And there is a very good book called The Untold Lives of the Women Killed by Jack the Ripper by Hallie Rubenhold. And that is a really good price as well there for the Kindle, $4.99 as well. And it's an award-winning Sunday Times bestseller, which, like I say, even if you consider other serial killers, like you look at people like John Wayne Gacy, you look at Ted Bundy, people don't talk too much about the victims. I mean, probably the one case where I think people talk more so about the victim than they do about the perpetrator would be the Charles Manson family Sharon Tate murders. So everyone knows Sharon Tate was murdered there because she was a film star, but there were other victims there also. But that is probably the only one I can think off the top of my head that bucks the trend, really. People are more sort of seduced by the actual, not say seduced, but they are more sort of interested. I think that is quite natural, that you want to find out what makes somebody tick. Why are they damaged? Are they damaged? Or are they broken? Or are they just not put together like everybody else? I think it's a fascinating debate and fascinating insight as well. I did criminology in my first, as part of my degree in university, and one of them was actually about one of the modules I did take for history was actually about Victorian Britain and the Ripper murders as well, as well as the low level sort of not murders, but a low level crime within Victorian Britain, particularly around stuff that you see in things like Oliver Twist, and let's face it, a lot of the criminality that was around back then no longer exists. I mean, the docks and ports have been totally transformed of what they are now from what they were then. Pubs are a lot different and less intolerable of sort of low level crimes such as pimps and whatnot. Don't get me wrong, it still goes on, of course it does, but nowhere near to the sort of open, the openness of it as it was back then. But so that did give me a little bit of a base watching this, and I did actually think that the sets were really good, the acting was really, really good. And 3 hours for this I thought was just about right, and it did provide a brilliant conclusion. And it did play on the theme of duality within the series, and showing that the explanation was that Dr. William Gull had had a stroke, and the experiment, and it was alluded to, are these women being experimented on? Are they just part of a game? Is this some sort of sick game that's being played on the police, perhaps? And I think that what it does tie up pretty well was that the explanation was given in this series was that the experiment, and was actually Gull himself, could he control a sort of a beast mode, a sort of animalistic, psychopathic, psychotic, psychotic break that he had maybe had. We may well now diagnose this as something, that back then that they had no sort of concept of, the the sort of the concept of madness and doing evil versus being evil was still very much in its infancy. I mean, you're talking about a time where people still used phrenology, which is the study of the cranial head, which would determine whether you were a criminal or not. So, this was very much in its infancy in terms of criminology type aspect. But looking at the most interesting part, just to recap it, I think, was keep a lookout for the George Lass Marxist anti-police storyline in this. I thought it was very, very good. Keep a lookout for the theme of duality within it, and also the justice. I feel that the series does a lot of justice, in fairness, by showing the various types of theories that people have put forward over the years, such as butcher, doctor, psychopath, actor, all sorts. So they do give everything a bit of a sort of a nod and a wink in the series as well, before coming up with their own sort of drama conclusion as well, which I thought was quite satisfying. So, I mean, overall, I give it 3.5 stars out of 5, but I would be probably more pushing 4 if I was being very, very generous. So, yes, anywhere between 3.5 to 4 stars out of 5. I thought that this is a really, really good series. If people have not seen this before, it is well worth a look. It is not overly violent. It is a really good series, and let's face it, I think this is better than From Hell, personally, anyways. Although that's a Hollywood drama, this does more justice for the sort of the Ripper, Jack the Ripper sort of fan, it's not fan base, but people who follow the case, people who know a little bit about the case, and also true crime fans as well. So, yeah, have a look at that. I appreciate you watching this. If you want to give me a like and throw a comment in as well to let me know what you thought of the series, and if you could subscribe as well.